The Women's Six Nations has moved into round 3. I apologise for not covering round 2. We had the no footage message from the Six Nations and we had to kind of abandon what we were doing and what we were looking at. We move on to round 3, right? For round 4 coming up. We're looking once again like England are going to win the championship. However, they were finally tested for round about an hour. Ireland gave them a real proper game.
How good was that game?
I know.
And I hate the scoreline of that game. Well, it's not what it deserved.
It's one of these things, right? I think we have to start, instead of clarifying these games by the final scoreline, what we have to start doing is talking about the minute at which it stopped being competition.
Yes.
With England in particular, but a little bit of France as well.
I was going to say this. I've considered now for a while. I remember when we went to Wales, England a couple of years. Yeah. In fact, last 2 years we've been to Wales, England. And I think both times when we spoke to each other on the way down, right, we kind of assigned ourselves the fact that Wales probably won't win.
Yes.
It's probably not something that's going to happen. But what minute, rather than the points margin, what is the minute we will get to? We will compete with them, right? And so for 2 years ago, Wales, England, it was 30, right? Last year, Wales, England, it was a little bit different.
It was weird because
it was back
instead
and
of it
forth.
being there being a minute where it was competitive, it was very.
It wasn't
much
a consistent block of.
But there were a few blocks where it was put together where they were able to force the game and get on top, right?
Yeah.
And what we saw from Ireland this weekend was them managed to, I would say, they were in for a chance of winning the game until about 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And they were in the game until about the hour mark.
Yeah.
And then what happened beyond that is kind of irrelevant. Like, that matters only to England.
Yeah.
What we saw was a team take apart and take on England the best anyone has, other than Canada, since the last World Cup.
Yeah. Other than that Canada game, it's the only time in this World Cup cycle that I've watched a game live and the thought has crossed my mind that England could possibly lose it.
Yeah.
Looking at with the energy of the game, watching it, right? And there have been times, people have kept England to low score lines, where they've made England play badly, they've rattled England. That's happened more than you'd actually think. But this is the only time that about 35 to 40 minutes in, I thought there is a genuine chance Ireland could win this.
Yeah. And I was doing the first Squid Rugby Live event at the time that was going on, so I knew the score by the time I watched it back. I knew England won. I'd seen the scores at 1.287 when I checked in right before we went live, and I was like, oh, okay, right, I'm not going to pull this back. I managed to avoid the score beyond that. But watching it back, thinking it was a procession to England, and actually how much more interesting a game it was than that.
Yeah.
And I think I do want to, we can't use footage, so we can't go into too many specifics, but talk a bit about how Ireland managed to disrupt them so well.
Yes.
Because I think it was a really, really smart game plan as much as anything. And I keep banging this drum, right, that you get what you pay for in women's rugby. Like, it is such a direct correlation between teams that invest in their players and in their coaches and the facilities they have access to and the results you get on the field, right? And so the IRFU, you go back a couple of years, were getting nothing, they were putting nothing in and they were getting nothing back out, right? They had coaching that wasn't up to standard, they had player facilities that weren't up to standard, and they had players having to either take shit contracts that forced them to work another job alongside, or they were amateurs, right? Or they were in the, Premier 15s as it was at the time, and then they were having to go back and forth, and none of it was ideal, right? They've streamlined a lot of that. There's still some issues with the player contracts, I believe. But what they have done is they've completely overhauled the facilities and the coaching available. And we now have a Ireland team, and I think we saw this. They, in that last 15 minutes, looked knackered.
Yeah.
Because they had, once against the Black Ferns, had to go up to that level of intensity before in their lives, right? And the ferocity with which they hit every ruck, which they got into every tackle, with which they were having to, how hard they're having to work to get back up the ground, the speed of the game was something that they've come up against a number of times because they've played England down the years, right? But they've only been able to match once. And I think England in this game shows that they're another level up from the Black Ferns as well, because Ireland could not keep it up for 80 minutes. In a way, against the Black Ferns, they got a bit more reprieve there, which I think is interesting from an English point of view. But we saw the investment in facilities, in just like actual conditioning and everything on top of the skill level, right? Yeah. Which has obviously always been very high. There's a really interesting thing Stacey Flood said in the last week, right? which is that she looks at all the players come through the 20s and players who come into the camp in the last few years, the likes of Aoife Wafer and Erin King, and Bevan Parsons and so on. And she said that all of these players are about 6 or 7 years ahead of where I was at their age.
Yeah.
And it's like universally because they're getting coaching from an earlier standard, because they started playing rugby younger, because you've got that option, and that is starting to show, is like those players are getting the opportunity to be the best rugby player they can be. I think that's an important part. We'll come back to coaching in a moment, but yeah.
Yeah, I think the thing that ultimately shows how England won this game, it is how long they've been doing this for.
Yeah.
Is that they've been playing at this level every week for, 8, 9, 10 plus years.
Yeah.
You're looking at, and Ireland have been doing it for 6 months, maybe.
Yeah.
Maximum a year, but not even really a year. Yeah, of course there's going to be wobbles when, in the second half, particularly when the English bench came on.
Yeah.
And that was something that I think I didn't factor in necessarily when I was thinking about like Ireland could win this game because they had them so rattled, was the fresh legs and what a massive difference they made. It was, for me, there was the moment where they tackled Jess Breach into touch, that the start of the second half.
Game. Oh, yeah,
that felt like that could have been a turning point of some description. But the big one, I thought, was, again, start the second half when the scores were 5-7, so dead tight. And I apologise for trying to promote women's rugby. We can't use any footage. Niamh O'Dowd flew out the line properly, and Alex Codling deserves enormous credit for the way that he's drilled this Irish defence. I think their defensive system really suits them. They've gone for a hammer system similar to what England men use, and they're really aggressive off the line. That, let's say that they're defending a 5v3, they go, great, we'll defend the first 3. And we'll make them get onto the outside. Because even England, who are superhuman, will sometimes drop that last ball. Or, your cover defence will be good enough that you tackle into touch. And Niamh O'Dowd flying off the line as a loose head prop, I think she has the engine of a 6, and she's such a good player around the park. Flying off the line, forcing Zoe Harrison to try a little loop pass around her, which Hannah Bottoman dropped, right? And that was just as England looked like they were getting into their attacking flow. And Ireland just picked their right moment, fly off the line and force them to drop that ball.
I do want to pick up on that, right? Again, like I mentioned, the coaching, such a huge part of this, right? That Ireland, and I keep coming back to this, didn't just hire Scott McMahon. They didn't just go after a quality head coach. They brought in people across the board. So, Alex Codling as forwards coach. You have Hugh Hogan, who was Leinster's former defence coach, was, moved on when Jack Nynaber came in and took over from him.
I apologise, Hugh Hogan. I've just given Codling his credit.
Yeah, but they and Gareth Steenson obviously coached in the Premiership as a kicking coach, and again their kicking game we'll come on to in a moment.
Yes.
But they have individual coaches covering every aspect of the game, right? And so they were able to, between them, put together a game plan where everything had detail. And that was the thing that disrupted it, right? Was I think there were 2 elements where I was going to say Ireland won this game, they didn't, but Ireland managed to cause such a mess in this game, right? And one was the breakdown and one was the kicking game. And a lot of that ties into the defence you're talking about, that kind of hammer defence, right? And it is built around the players they have available, and they've been able to drill these players to play a game plan that suits them and that works, right? Because they can pay attention to every part of the game, because they have a 6-person coaching panel instead of, Wales and Scotland had, Wales had a 3-person coaching panel, it's now 4. Scotland have a 4-person coaching panel. It allows you that extra detail to go okay, we can have someone just come in and look at the breakdown. We can have someone just looking at the kicking game, right? And work out those details. And that's what we saw. And again, we talk about the defence, right? That I think is a huge part of how they played. Is they built this defence, an adaptation of that Springbok or England hammer system, around the players they have available, which is instead of going, we've got some incredibly athletic second rows, the likes of Atoje and Etzebeth, they've gone, we've got 2 props with unbelievable engines in O'Dowd and Zhu Gang, right? Yeah. And they are using them so fully in that one is blitzing out a line with a back rower, and as you mentioned, really flying up, and the other one is corner flagging, is working in that typical catch-up defender.
Zhu Gang's quick, man. She's quick.
So there's one in particular in the first half where the Red Roses get outside and they go wide, and it's a sloppy pass, as I said, because they're struggling to get outside this blitz. But when they do get there, there's then a great tackle on the wing, and Zhu Gang hairs it across, smashes the ruck, and manages to force a counter ruck, which a few other players join in, and they win the ball back.
Yeah.
And this became the theme of the game, is they were so smart in the breakdowns they identified over that first hour. And when they got to 60 minutes, they just they ran out of steam to keep contesting, and they couldn't slow the ball down, and England just had this quick ball.
The other thing that's mad is England kept Wafer quite quiet. That I felt like they'd really done their research on Wafer and just really targeted her every time she was near a breakdown, particularly in that first half. And so that made me think like, oh, they've got her still to unleash. Yeah.
To be horrendously nerdy for a moment,
Yeah.
I think Aoife Wade made the best carry I've seen in this championship.
Yeah.
In this game. So there was a moment where they stripped the ball in a maul. I'm not sure which Irish player it was. You couldn't really see. You know, I tried to look and give them credit. It's probably Dorothy Wall. Though her yelling use it lads," at Mo Hunt at one point during a maul was another highlight of this game. Irish player, I'm going to assume it's Wall, strips the ball, presents it back on their own try line, like as England are about to go over and score. After Niamh Jones gives away one of the best penalties of the championship as well, which just comes in the side and kills all momentum on the maul. They go another phase, Ireland strip it. They then present the ball back, and literally like the try line is here and the ball is like here. Like there is an inch aside. And Lane just pops it up to Wafer, who is stood complete standing start, and manages to, despite having 3 England players come in on her, make 2 metres. And despite having no run up whatsoever, no charge, no margin for error, and 3 English forwards on her, she makes 2 metres, and it allows for the clearance, and they get out of the 22.
Yeah.
And 99% of forwards get caught behind the try line there.
She is a freak, though.
Yeah.
She's a complete
and
freak.
a good carry there is just not being caught behind the line.
Yeah.
And instead she makes 2 metres off it. She makes a gain line off that. Like, it was unbelievable. Just some of the little involvements and I thought Erin King was like, we talked about this before the championship, right? But like, this felt like the game where she really stepped up.
Gutted that she's out the World Cup.
Yeah, because she was phenomenal.
That World Cup would have been the time where she goes, I'm world class.
Yeah.
And like really steps up.
I felt like
she
this was
will
the game.
yet.
I felt like
She
this was
will
the game.
yet.
Like,
yeah.
there was one turnover she made towards the end of the first half.
She was one of the best players on the pitch.
Yeah, I thought she
you
might have been.
mentioned-
She was up there. Dorothy Wall, I thought was absolutely
Dorothy
brilliant.
Wall, I was about to say.
Both props were great, but you've got to take some points off them for scrummaging.
Yeah, that's true. That is
But
true.
ultimately, right, if there is a player of the match to give in this game, I think if I were giving it, I would have given it to Sarah Byrne.
Yeah.
Because I know she only came on and played half an hour or so, but she turned that game entirely.
Yeah.
And I mentioned Ireland no longer being able to keep up the rucks they were selecting, because like it was so smart, the range of rucks they were hitting. It was like they would leave it if it was a quick pick and go. But they would, like, if they went wide, they would try and smash it so they can't get a quick ball. They can't do anything that won't allow the defence time to reorganise. Just incredibly smart, incredibly well drilled kind of ruck defence.
Yeah.
And then you throw on top of that
The scrum as well.
The scrum,
The fact
yeah.
that she took that from being dominant to utterly pulverising them.
Yeah.
That it then became a weapon with which they were getting points consistently.
Yeah.
And yeah, she was impossible to live with. She's just world class. The two of them, the English tight heads, her and
England did 2 things where they, one, brought on Sarah Byrne, who was an absolute rampage, and 2, they started playing much tighter.
Yeah.
They stopped playing to width as much. They started doing a thing that I think is interesting, and I'm not sure I agree with, of using Ellie Kildunn as a distributor, using her as a second fly half. And I don't think that's where you get the best out of her.
I agree. She's the
want her
best
running those
fullback
angles
/
often?
winger in the world. Why would you not want her out wide?
Yeah.
You know, it wastes her. And of course she's good at it, because she's good at everything. And she's got players out wide who are going to be brilliant. But if you
And if
swapped
you
her and, let's say, Meg Jones.
Yeah.
Right,
Meg
so
Jones,
Meg Jones
that's
is
exactly-
passing to
yeah.
her. Meg Jones is an experienced fly half herself as well.
Yeah.
Then you will get a bit more yardage out of
Yeah.
Kildunn's leg drive and her speed.
Yeah. And it just becomes like, if you want to use her to open up space for others, use her as a decoy runner rather
Yeah.
than use her as a distributor.
Using her on short sides as that role, fair enough.
Yeah,
fair enough,
yeah,
because
yeah.
you will get some cheap yards. As I say, like the power on those legs is ludicrous.
Yeah.
right?
You look at Meg Jones's try, right? And that is very much the role you want Ellie Kildunn playing. Is being in that wide channel, and she's got options either side of her so she can link up, but also she can go for the outside break herself and then,
Yeah.
give the pass to Dow, who puts Meg Jones over.
One more point I want to talk about on Ireland England
Okay.
before we move on. The Irish attack, just how
Yes.
far that's come in the last year.
Yeah,
Because if you looked at their Six Nations last year,
Yeah.
as much as they played very well, I think it wouldn't be too unfair to say that their tactics were quite minimalist.
Sure.
That they were very kick heavy, but didn't really have much to back it up. But no one quite learned how to defend it yet.
Yeah.
Right? But it was very clear, looking at WXV, that in the background, clearly in training, all they were practicing was their attack. And then Scott Brown was kind of saying, well, our defence is our best thing. So when it comes to the game, just kick the leather off it and just trust our D, right? Whereas it's very clear that, yeah, they are working on their attack, because their attacking shape literally looks better every single game you look at them.
Yeah.
And that is the thing that gives me the most hope from an Irish perspective, that they are really going to go far is that if you look at their attack, this Six Nations, we didn't cover the Italy game, but them sticking 40 points on there, Anna McGann getting a hat-trick, Eve Higgins looking absolutely unreal in the centres, that they are constantly looking better and better as an attacking team. Obviously, Scott Bemand is the attacking coach who set the foundation for what we now know the England Red Roses attack to be. It makes me quite scared that they are going to get better and better because you see Dana O'Brien, loves
She
to boot
was
the ball.
superb.
Absolutely outstanding.
The
Set
range
up
on her kicks, excellent.
Set up the try for Costigan. Really lovely one where they get the ball off turnover ball. She just has one look up into the backfield, right? And Costigan, all she's doing is looking at Abby Dow.
Yeah.
And Hannah Bottoman is the furthest player out on the wing. Dow is obviously panicking and going, I've got to cover that on
The
the edge
moment
because
a ball
Costigan's
goes
rapid.
blind, Dow, having been in the backfield, sprints up, and O'Brien really smartly drops onto exactly where Dow was when she caught the ball.
Yeah.
Right? But Dow is going, shit, Costigan's got so much space here. I've got to come up and cover
And
that.
Costigan calls it straight away. She's the whole time just watching Dow. As soon as the space opens up, she just says, send me.
Yeah.
Because she has such a head start on Dow.
It's really smart just anticipating where the space is going to be rather than looking at where it is at the moment. Because in the moment you catch the ball, the space is the pass, right?
Yeah.
But that space is going to close off in somewhere in the next 2 seconds when Dow arrives and smashes her.
Yeah.
So instead you drop into where Dow is currently.
Because a kicking game is very, very good. It can only get you so far if your attack isn't also good. Because people can close that off and try and force you to play out a little bit from your own half or
Especially
wherever
if they say
the middle
disciplined
third.
and your scrum isn't working.
Exactly. But the Irish attack is now good.
Yeah.
And it's only going to get better.
Yeah. I think obviously the scoreline was harsh on them. That kicking game we could talk about for hours. Again, it's hard about clips. You can't pull examples, which is the tricky thing. But there's a few brilliant kicks by O'Brien, and also them using a variety of kickers as well. I think is really
Stacey Flood, really
Flood
good.
coming in at
They're
fullback.
both left footers as well there.
Both centres as well, stabbing free little kicks, and in the wings as well, also being used but primarily having two proper kicking options with Flood and with O'Brien, and O'Brien in particular having that massive boot. Lane as well, I thought didn't kick as often, but had some really nice touches in there.
Yeah.
But their kicking game was just incredibly smart and pinned England back, right? And they kicked for distance, which left England with very few options because they were running it back, and then the kick chase was good. And generally they were getting bounces because England are used to playing a lighter backfield.
Yeah.
And the benefit of that, right, is it allows Kildunn to run it back and make plenty of yardage. But if you get free bounces on it, she doesn't have time to turn around and then do a little sidestep and then go.
England are a team whose attack feeds their kicking game.
Yeah.
Ireland could very much be the other way around in a year's time.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Yeah. So, should we move on? There's so much more you can say about that game, but we want to try and cover all three.
Yeah.
And it's harder without footage. It's really, not to keep banging that drum. But should we talk about Wales v France?
Let's talk about Wales v France.
So I watched this game right before doing the live script rugby thing. So I watched the first half in my hotel, and then the second half I watched largely in the back of a taxi. And then at the Swansea.com stadium, I put it on the screen. And so broadly, my reflection on this is pleased from a Welsh point of view. It's the performance I was hoping they put in last year, and it feels. The thing about Wales right now, right, is it felt like we lost a year. It feels like this is there were an upward curve through 2020, which was obviously a disaster, through 21 into 22, and it was started to get slightly less steep, sort of up, still technically going up, and then it dipped right back down. And I feel we finally, with this performance, managed to just get back up to the next step along from where they were before that crash last year.
Yeah. This is another one that I kind of measured in minutes rather than anything else.
Yeah.
But more than anything, because France were, in a way, always going to beat Wales. Again, there were points where you thought, oh, this could be possible, but also I thought it less than I did with Ireland v England.
I didn't really think Wales were going to. There was maybe about 5 minutes where I thought Wales could win the game,
I thought Wales were challenging them. Let's put it that way.
I thought there was a good chance of Wales getting a losing bonus point here.
Yeah.
Or potentially even both bonus points.
Yeah. Once again, I kind of view this in minutes, but the main thing I thought is most times when I watch the Welsh women's team nowadays, there at some point in the game is a try that the opposition score where I go, how the hell have we conceded that? Where, somebody just really fluffs their lines, gets their roll wrong, drops a really simple ball, something like that. There wasn't a try that I can think of that was like that
I
in
thought
this
the
game.
first try had a touch of that, like it was quite soft. Actually, both of Bullard's tries. By the way, as a Welsh fan, I'm so sick of conceding tries to Emily Bullard.
Yeah, I know.
Like, I'm over it.
She needs a day
I don't
off.
get it, yeah.
But I don't know. I see those more as credit to France for
Yeah.
being so clinical in attack, because they were, even though they were for a bit of the game. You know, from a French perspective, you'd be fuming at like the Bernardo dropped ball. You know, there were a couple of drop balls in the second half. There was like, with literally like 12 minutes to go, they dropped a ball, and you look at the scoreboard, you're like, oh wait, Wales are only like 10 points down here. There's nothing really in this game. But yeah, the Boulard try, like Arbez's kick is absolutely on the money.
That's really good. I think, again, there's a positioning question there, but that's fine. The second one, I think, is maybe the more egregious, where there are just two players getting sucked in very, very easily, where you can kind of stand off and cover that space quite easily. But at the same time, right, it's Pauline Bourdon-Sans-Zeus, and you do shit your pants when she picks up the ball and runs
100%.
5 metres out.
And also, like, I think the main point I'm trying to make here is the effort was incredible from Wales.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely. Like,
they clearly can live at this standard.
Yeah.
It was proof that they can. You know, not necessarily that they do just yet, but they definitely can.
Yeah, it was a massive step up from that England game.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a reaction so much as just like an evolution of the performance.
Yeah.
I think they're moving forward all the time. I also think we're going to see in that final round, there is quite a big gap between England and France at the minute.
Yeah.
I think France the gap has grown so big that it used to be like England here, France here, everyone else down here. I think everyone else has got better. France remained roughly around the same level, and England got even better.
Yeah.
So like we're now at the point where France are not that much further better than everyone else.
I agree. They're kind of the halfway point between
Yeah.
England and the rest of the pack.
I think they're
aren't
now
they?
closer to the rest of the pack than they are to England.
I'd agree.
However, they still have a handful of players, and it's one of these things that matters so much more in women's rugby than in like men's. If you can put together a cohesive game plan, like you often see, you can cancel these players out. It doesn't seem to be the case at women's test level. Like where if you have a player like Bourdon-Sans-Zeus, she can win you the game on their own. You know? And a player like Emily Bullard, they can win you the game. On
And
their own.
again, like coming off the bench,
Donna Bourgeois,
yeah,
the game on their own.
to talk
Foul.
about to talk about. You said just a minute ago that Sarah Byrne was the player of the match in a way for the England game. You could say the same about Cal Fowey here.
Yes,
Coming off the bench, and every prop who comes into international rugby, right, you will in your first 10 caps get bullied. It's going to happen.
Sure.
And Maisie Davis has been brilliant in the first few caps. And coming up against an experienced bastard like Cal Fowey, who loves to just absolutely... But like, she just looked at Maisie Davis and went, 19 years old, lunch.
Yeah.
And ate her up. And yeah, Maisie Davis obviously got the yellow card for the penalty try that happened near the end. And yeah, I think that was another thing of like, that was where the minutes shrunk, you know, is that we are bringing off the Wales are bringing off the bench some really promising youngsters who have been brilliant, right? Who are really, really promising. France brought off the bench a, let's say, formerly world-class player, potentially still, world-class scrummager, I would certainly say, who has been around the block and knows every trick in the book of how to bully someone at scrum time. And that can cancel out an entire game.
It is going to be the one really interesting area of that England-France game is the scrum.
Yeah.
Because I think France could take them at the scrum.
Yeah. It's hard to tell.
It's hard to tell.
Because Byrne and
both of them
Muir
are so dominant. But France's pack is just eating for anyone.
Yeah.
And we saw Wales got a few moments against England where they did manage to get on top, and there wasn't... No. There were a few penalties that went their way, but it was more down to France scrummaging illegally than Wales, like...
Yeah. Because like the scrum in the first half went well for Wales. It was clearly one of those where...
But Wales were holding it up, and France were trying, like, out of frustration, trying to drive on angles and stuff.
Yeah. And clearly the referee, Hollywood, did not like that.
No.
And it clearly got in her head early on that through that Wales were the better scrum, even though I'm not entirely convinced they were.
No.
But it was always going to happen eventually.
Wales in that first half got quite a few moments of luck.
Yeah.
Be it refereeing, be it ball bouncers, be it French players dropping balls.
Yeah, conditions.
Be it Bourdon-Sans-Zeus missing a drop goal. Because she's clearly got that thing of like when you're a kid and you learn a new word and you just want to say it.
I thought that was the first sign of France being a bit rattled.
I think it might have been,
forcing things. And there were a few signs of that kind of throughout. The main moments of composure that kind of won the game, there was obviously the try on the stroke of half time, just after they'd bombed that Bernardo one, made you kind of think, no, they are composed enough. And the Mano Faleo try right at the start of the second half, that was kind of the big moment where you're like, oh no, they are bloody good. And Faleo, I think, is on the shortlist of player of the championship. She is just incredible as a leader, as a player around the park. She's kind of like the I was going to say like a Maya Roos type slash Sophie de Goody style, like does absolutely everything.
All court baller.
Yeah,
all
that's
croft.
it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, is really quick, unbelievable at line out time. Every time you see her carry, you think like, oh, it's fine, you can nail it. Absolutely not. She makes about 10, 20 more metres than you expect her to.
Yeah.
She's just incredible, and offloads all the time. And yeah, her vision to score that try where she picks up the ball straight away, knowing that Wales are overfolding, and just dives straight into the post. She's just incredible.
I do want to ask you one thing about Wales' game plan.
Yes.
Right. Do you think the fact that they are kicking less than Gloucester Hartpury and keeping the ball in hand more is a good thing or a bad thing? Do you think it suits the way these players and this team are set up to play?
I would say short-term good thing, long-term bad thing.
Yeah.
Or the other way around. But it's fine at the moment, but they will need to kind of change the ways they're doing about that. Kayleigh Powell's been really, really good.
Yeah.
She's been the shining light for Wales this Six Nations for me.
Kate Williams.
Kate Williams as well. She was
probably the standout.
probably the best player for Wales in that game for sure. And yeah, probably throughout the Six Nations as well. But yeah, Kayleigh Powell has been absolutely outstanding. She's the one Wales player I look at and just go, you're a full-on footballer. Like, you can play everything. You're zinging passes across the pitch all the time, cross-field kicks, winging it in behind and all sorts, right? Sometimes as a Welsh fan, it does put your heart in your
There
mouth.
are heart-and-mouth moments with it, yeah.
Where you're like, what on earth are you doing? But it's worth it,
Yeah.
right? Claky George playing for Gloucester, her main thing is kicking for length, right? And Wales did slightly miss that on the weekend, was just the extra sort of 10, 15 metres Claky George will put on a kick that Kayleigh Powell is slightly short of it. Still a great boot on her, don't get me wrong, but I think hers is more accuracy than power, her boot. Whereas, yeah, Claky George, it is about length. I much prefer, like, I'm really glad that Wales are attempting a more attacking game plan at the moment, because under Cunningham, they attempted a contestable kicking game which wasn't working for so long.
Yeah.
And I feel for Cunningham here because I completely know like what happened, in that you believe in a game plan so much because you've seen it work with previous teams you've coached or other teams in your league who are doing the same thing and it's working for them with similar personnel to you. And you really believe it's going to work and you're really adamant, like, I must keep trying this because if we keep banging on the door, it will break down. But
And
with
in the odd moments where it does work, you go like, oh, the rewards are massive.
And you can show that on your team review on Monday and
Yeah.
go like, this is what
what
we
we're
should
trying
be
to do.
doing. Yeah. And I think Cunningham really, really persisted with that, and I can completely see why he did. But it didn't really work. And I think just as a mental reset for the players so they don't get burnt out trying the same tactics to not much avail, I'm glad that they're breaching out and trying to do something different and trying to run this attacking shape. That they're getting Karis Cox loads of touches of the ball,
She's been really good.
which is really entertaining as well, like to watch. And it's not always working. Sometimes it's easy to boot the ball downfield and hope they drop it. We saw that against Scotland. But yeah, I think long term they will want to invest on a long kicking game. But for the time being, I don't mind them doing that. Again, it's the opposite of what I was saying about Ireland earlier.
The one Gloucester Hartpury thing I do think's happened is that they have managed to, and it's really satisfying. You look at Gloucester Hartpury, last two PWR finals, the most naked examples, but it happened in games throughout the season, in the last 3 seasons, where an opposition will get in front or get in charge, or they'll be bossing the game, and Gloucester Hartpury just stick to the process, stick to the terms. They, even if they concede, they get back in the opposition half, they try and force a penalty or a knock-on, and then just get down there and they score again.
Yeah.
And you just trust this process. And we saw Wales starting to do that, and it kept them in the game, right?
Yeah.
There was no panic, there was no scramble, there was just this, we trust the process, we've got a
That
game
Courtney
plan that
Keat
works.
disallowed try could have really changed the momentum of that.
I feel if that try is given, the score is a fair reflection of the game. And as it is, there is some slightly flattered France.
Sure.
But we're just saying, like, it comes down to minutes, doesn't it? And like France got the penalty try that really took the game beyond Wales in 60
Because of
minutes?
that, they deserved the score they
nice.
got.
Yeah.
Because of the
exactly.
sheer scrum and maul dominance they got at the end of the game.
But it's just Wales being very clinical, being very technically sound.
Yeah.
And obviously you can say, like Courtney Keat
And
tried
bloody
to score,
minded.
but yeah.
Above all.
And just believing in a game plan, right? Like, you talk about that with Cunningham. So much of executing a game plan is believing in it and believing it's going to work, right? And you look at I've always talked in the channel about Warren ball teams, right? Is like when your game plan, and this is something that's true with Sean Lynn's strategy, is so built on effort and work rate, you need both the players to play for each other and for the coach. And that is very much something that's always happened with Gloucester Hartpury and is seemingly happening with Wales now. But also, as well as that buy-in, you need them to believe in the game plan, be emotionally right, and to be like, okay, no, we can get back in the game if we do this.
Yeah.
And this is the way that we do that. And I think this was a game that showed like this game plan can work. And on that note, I do want to move on. Unless you've got anything to add on Wales?
I just want to say, really lovely that we just talk positively about the Welsh national rugby team.
I know.
Very rarely happens.
Still
even
haven't won a
loss.
game in the Senior Six Nations this year.
Yeah, which is a shame. And finally, I just want to say, Georgia Evans breaking a record for most tackles made without missing one.
Yeah.
She's been brilliant this Six Nations. Like, she is an established player, has been playing for Wales as long as pretty much we've been watching them, and she is improving still. And that's really, really cool. That's just great to see. So just fair play. Georgia Evans having a really good Six Nations.
Absolutely. Okay. Speaking of teams learning to finally execute the game plan under a new coach, right? Italy.
Yes.
Let's talk about Italy, because
Italia.
this was kind of the surprise of the weekend.
Big time. Big time. Scotland, I think, 50 minutes into the game.
Yeah,
you'd
no
have
one's
said-
more surprised than Scotland.
Yeah, you'd have said Scotland is still going to win this game.
Yeah.
Like, they were I just didn't know how they were going to lose it, But like every try Italy scored, I was kind of going like, well, it's not an enormous red flag, is
Yeah.
it? But I don't know, man. Like, I just feel like the things that the Italy backline have promised to do for a long time just kind of came to fruition in this game. And the pack obviously did their bit and kind of gave them really, really good ball. But you're looking at the tries, like each winger getting a run in, know, and obviously Mutsa getting a couple, it's so satisfying to see because, this backline have always promised to be really, really good. And Emma Stevanin coming in at 10 with Madia coming onto the bench instead.
I thought that really worked as an actress.
Really inspired. I think Media's not getting any faster or younger, and Stevanin is a really balanced player, can play across the midfield, across the back line pretty much. You could probably put her anywhere. And it's the sort of fly off who will sit quite deep and will catch the ball and will pass it straight away. Because she doesn't take too much on herself. She's got Bea Rigoni outside her who will take on too much herself. She's got Veronica Medea. She's got Michaela Solari outside her, who will also, will straighten at the line and give.
Superb.
Yeah.
It was really, really good. Goal kicking aside.
Yes, true. But the back three are the people you need to feed. You need to feed the speed in this team, and Stevanin is the perfect player for that.
Yeah. So, I think this was the day in which we saw what Fabio Roselli has been trying to do with this team, right? That there were blinks of it in the last two games. You could see a bit and you could go like, oh, okay, I guess there's something happening here. And he is doing, as we talked about in the previous episode of this, exactly for this team what he did for Zebre, right?
Yeah.
Which is when he came into Zebre, they were a largely forward-dominated team who were set up to keep the score down. And every now and again they won a game as a result, but broadly they were losing most of them and they were there to keep the scores down and try and get losing bonus points. And he went, well, you get just the same number of points for scoring 4 tries. So he just went, well, what we're going to do is we're going to score 4 tries in every single
We're going to
game.
give it to Simone Jessie.
Yeah. And he set up a game plan that was built purely around the only thing that matters is scoring 4 tries in every game. And sometimes that will win us the game. Sometimes we'll lose, but we'll still have a point on the scoreboard.
It's a good laugh,
And
innit?
it worked. And it was great fun to watch. And essentially, I was looking at this Italy team and the way they were attacking that first half, and you're like, well, they are going to score 4 tries, right? And all that matters for Scotland is can they score 5, right? Or kick all their conversions because, Celia had a horrible day with the boot. Obviously got kick clocked on one as well.
Yes. The one she absolutely nailed from the
Yeah, the
touchline
only
as well.
one she kicked was the one she got done for kick clock.
Maybe that's it, though. She needs 61 seconds to kick a perfect conversion.
But yeah, that was cruel on her. She had a brilliant game otherwise, though.
Yes, she did.
But I was really interested by Italy's shape and structure. So they were running this really interesting shape across most of the field, where they've essentially got rid of the idea of a back line. So instead, they would keep the open side wing would stay right out on the touchline, would be like right out in case they wanted to do cross kicks or get to width, whatever. I would hold their depth an awful lot. But the blindside winger and all the other backs would pair off with, they'd have 2 forwards together in these 2-2-2-2-2 pods. And they'd have in the boot of each of these pods, one of the backs. And they essentially join in a random order, right? So you might have, Ostoy Manuzzi in the first one. You might have Muzzo as the blindside winger in the next. You might have then, Rigoni or whoever. Like they would, and then you end up with like 10 on the wing, and like you'd end up with in all sorts of positions. But the idea just being that they've got someone that can provide a completely different threat out the back, right? They can either drop it in, and you can have Muzzo suddenly coming into a short ball round the corner, or they can be linking up with another back and getting it wide, or they can be bringing the extra forward pod in. It's a really interesting shape. It's a little bit what the Springboks did first under Wanky Stick. There was a little bit of that, of like pairing players up with like mismatched players. But I think it's like an even more interesting evolution of that.
Yeah.
Just the way that they're using that to bring all players into the game. And instead of having players acting as... They essentially have forwards and backs as two distinct roles rather than 15 different positions. Scrum half, I guess, is a separate thing. But like... with the ball in hand, like I thought it was really interesting, and you saw them open up so much space by just changing the picture last second, right?
Yeah.
Because they always had a strike runner able to run with pace, or someone able to run with, weight and power.
Sure.
At every single opportunity, they had these like pockets lined up, and every now and again they'd pull a forward out, and it would end up, they'd maybe have playing off 10.
I'll tell you what, it's ambitious, but it's so hard to defend against a team like that.
Yeah.
Because you can defensively change the picture quite late, and they can still adapt. Like, you've got a rugby ball there.
No,
here.
Oh, here. Yeah.
That'll do. And sometimes it is the case. If you're the head carrier, pretend we've got Ellie Kildun here is in my boot, right? And you tip that ball to me, right? Instead of you tipping it in behind there, sometimes it is a case of then lifting that in behind to the player there. That I think it's called a knife ball.
Yeah.
That you pull it in behind there, and because they've looked up, they've seen we're going to nail you because we've just got two isolated carriers here, right? And then they go, great, we've changed the picture now, you've bitten.
Yeah.
Even though you've made the correct decision because I'm going to carry otherwise, And yeah, teams like that are so hard to defend against because you can read a play, but then you've got to whack them.
And the other side of this, right, is by only using twos rather than threes, they then have more units available, right? So they can then link up to another one immediately afterwards. Like, say they're hitting Rigoni out the back, she can then ship it onto another forward who can then carry.
Yeah, and has somebody there to support, importantly. The other thing this opens up as well, that Italy men run this very well, Ireland men run this as well, and the Springboks run this a lot, is the groups of four, which is coming into fashion now.
The Red Roses.
We talked about the Red Roses doing this the other week, where they split off twos, and then sometimes they just send them together, and then if anybody's spare, great, we'll find you a job in 2 phases time,
Yeah, no, I just thought their attack was brilliant.
Yeah.
I think it feels fair that one of the Italian backs got player of the match, and I thought Muzzo was great and did more than just scoring those 2 tries. Like,
it should have been Ostoy Manuzzi though.
Surely. I saw Ostoy Manuzzi was great. I thought Francesca Scorbini was the best player on the pitch. I thought she was absolutely brilliant. The way she was flying out and like wanted to seemingly make every single tackle Italy made all game, and then carried so well, made a brilliant turnover as well, and like
Scored a try.
Took that try incredibly well.
I said
and,
this on Twitter as well, right?
Yeah.
But she scored that try by doing that thing. On Rugby Challenge, when you're 1 metre out from the try line, you press X, and they just can't tackle you, so you just like teleport through the defenders to dive. She did that IRL.
Yeah.
That was weird, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, she's great. And like the sheer ferocity for which she does anything, like she doesn't do anything half-hearted. I love it.
Yeah.
Word as well, Beatrice Rigoni doing a reverse Nonu. And like when Nonu started out as a massive centre and it then became the most skillful guy you've ever seen. Rigoni started out as the most skillful guy you've ever seen and is now becoming, seemingly, she's now like having a Tom Jordan moment and convinced she's massive.
She's just added 5 years to her career.
Like,
That's what I'm saying.
She's become like a crash ball centre out of nowhere and she keeps charging into things and like flinging herself at people and I'm here for it. I thought she had the best game in quite a while.
Yeah, she was really, really good and set up that try for Dianka really, really nicely.
Yeah.
Obviously, we spoke about her partner, Veronica Madia, being on the bench, coming on as a game manager.
Yeah,
I thought it really worked as an axis. Fun stat for you.
How many, since Ford and Farrell broke up, how many couples have played 10 and 12 together at international level?
Not that many. Fun stat for you. Bear Rigoni is on the bench this weekend for the first time since 2017.
Wow, okay. That is a fun
World
stat.
Cup. Yeah. Courtesy of Nick Heath, that stats. So thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Nick, as always.
But yes, the other try that Muzzo scored as well off counter-attack, I absolutely loved that because that felt like a product of Italy just mentally knackering Scotland.
Yes.
That they had. They ended up just going, we just need to get rid of this ball with absolutely no consequence of like thinking about where they're going to put it, whatever. They had Emma Orr over the breakdown before they kick. They kick off Lisa Thompson instead of Helen Nelson, and Bless Thompson is not her best kick. It goes straight down the front of the Stuni Minuzzi. They have Helen Nelson chasing on the short side, quite importantly, and the second furthest out woman from Rona Lloyd on the far touchline is Ellis Martin, the hooker.
Yeah.
And so
Who I find a brilliant game, by the way.
She is so good.
She's
so good.
fantastic. Like-
But she is not an outside back.
No.
And so Astuni Minucci just goes, great, I'm just going to target her, get to her outside. And obviously Rona Lloyd goes, this poor old hooker inside me, I have to help her out. Yeah. And doesn't think about, if I then watch the outside, we've got enough people inside there.
Yeah.
Naturally, as a winger, your instinct there is, I've got to look after my little mate here who's got to cover a lot of yardage, And she manages to free Muzzo, who is an outstanding finisher.
Muzzo's first try also, Sillery's touch to create that is one of my favourite little 3 seconds of rugby I've seen this year. I thought it was amazing. The way she manages to, in a split second, go from dummy to threading a brilliant pass. That little seeing, she's got 2 players there, she's going to come in the backfield. And that little slight dummy that then she adjusts into just being going through the gap, then instantly, the moment the defenders bought the dummy, threading the pass anyway as they start to readjust back in, and leaving it for Musa to run onto. Just an absolutely gorgeous touch. Yeah. She then nails the conversion on 61 seconds.
Also, a quick word for, obviously, and again, I'm not going to use the footage for this, but Evie Gallagher scored a try where rugby ball, you throw the ball in, and they then do a little lift inside to the receiver from scrum half, running in and going through that gap where they split the line out really, really nicely.
Alex Dunbar special.
Yes, indeed. I love, great reference. I love that they scored that try having ran that move earlier and it completely failing. And then they just went, we're just going to do that again. And it worked on the try line. Respect. Mad balls on you, Rachel Malcolm. Fair play to you.
So does that wrap up everything we've got for this round of the Women's Six Nations?
I believe it does. So Scotland go to Welford Road next. I'm going to go there. I'm going to go watch the game tomorrow. I've got my Scotland shirt primed and ready.
As a preview, right, let's do 5 words each on each game, okay? So we have Scotland v England, 5 words. How do you feel it's going to go?
Scotland win the anthem battle.
The thing is, right, it's Red Roses by a chunk. No, Scotland make it to 40 minutes.
Okay. Wales v Ireland?
This one I'm excited about, because this can go either way. I think Ireland are massive favourites, but this for me is the chance for Wales to really step up and take the next gear.
5 words?
5 words. Al Cal is back.
Yes!
Bitches.
That's fine. I'll allow you an extra word. Wales fight,
5 words.
but Anna McGann.
Yeah, that's a strong argument. Yeah. Okay, and France v Italy.
Oh. Vibes.
Okay.
Vibes. France.
I was going to go the same route and say balling.
Okay, cool. We've not got much to say on that game, but it's all positive what we are saying.
Not much to say in preview other than I think there might be the most tries I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
It'll be the first time that both teams score a try in the same minute, I believe. I'm excited for that one.
Do you think when Fabio Roselli looks at Carla Arbez, he's just going to simply explode at the amount of jouet that he is witnessing?
He's going to try and sign her.
Yeah. You heard it here first. She's going to play for Italy in round 5.
And Zebre.